on up here a little bit, 3 steps closer.
It's great here to be here today with this group of small business owners and my colleagues, Senator Marshall and Senator Welch. Let me state some facts that I think are not controverted. Visa and MasterCard control around 80% of the credit card market in the United States. At a time when consumers are concerned about many things but essentially focused on the issue of inflation, the Visa MasterCard duopoly is making it worse for American families. Each time a credit or debit card is used, Visa and MasterCard charge what's called an interchange or a swipe fee. Some of that they keep for themselves, most of it they give to the bank that issued the card. Visa and MasterCard set the fees on behalf of thousands of banks and tell the merchants, take it or leave it. There is no negotiation, there is no competition. Merchants have no choice but to accept the outrageous fees or else. In 2022 alone, U.S. merchants and consumers paid $93.2 billion in credit card interchange fees to line the pockets of the biggest Wall Street banks. Guess what? They're planning another interchange fee increase in October, which would increase the fees for small businesses by more than $500 million. Interchange fees, now this is something, I hope you'll take this fact home. Interchange fees are the second largest cost for many small businesses, only behind labor cost. The amount these businesses pay in credit card fees can be the equivalent of hiring 2 or 3 more employees. Enough is enough. Senator Marshall and I introduced the Credit Card Competition Act, which would introduce competition and choice to the credit card market and bring down excessive credit card fees. It would require only the largest 30 or so banks in the country to enable at least 2 credit card networks to be used on their credit cards. In other words, an issue that we all recognize as competition. At least one of those networks has to be a company outside the Visa MasterCard duopoly. This competition and choice between networks will bring down fees. The Credit Card Competition Act is estimated to save merchants and consumers $15 billion each year. Visa, MasterCard, and their big bank buddies have committed to, quote, spend whatever is needed, close quote, to defeat our Credit Card Competition Act. They've also taken to spreading misinformation to try to get their way. I stood up to these banks in 2010. I'm not afraid of them any longer, and no one should be. I look forward to working with all of you to get the Credit Card Competition Act across the finish line. My ally in the battle this year is from the other party, so this is a bipartisan effort, but a Midwesterner from the state of Kansas. He has shown a determination and a fierceness, which I value very much, and I'd like to introduce my colleague, Senator Roger Marshall.
Thanks. Thanks, Dick. Thank you. Well, thank you, Senator Durbin, and thanks for your leadership as well. Senator Welch, thanks for joining us, and we appreciate your friendship as well. We appreciate Senator J.D. Vance's support in this legislation as well. What I wish is just one time that this body behind us, this Senate, would pick Main Street over Wall Street. Just one time. One time we need to stand up for Main Street and fight back on these Wall Street banks and this duopoly of Visa and MasterCard, which are charging our constituents, the folks in Kansas, the folks in Illinois, the folks in Vermont, 7 times what they're charging people in the European Union. These big banks, this duopoly, have increased their fees. They've netted from going from $10 billion a year to over $90 billion a year since 2010. In 13 short years, they more than tripled the amount of bills that they're sending these folks. When you're a retailer, you don't get to choose. Visa or MasterCard control over 80% of their customers. So when you have that much dominating that one industry, they don't have a choice. Visa and MasterCard are not transparent. These folks behind me have no idea from purchase to purchase how much these big companies are clawing back out of their hard income. And what they're going to share with you is that certainly labor is their largest cost. But after that cost, that these swipe fees are more than they're paying for utilities, more than they're paying for rent, more than they're paying for health care. Retail companies across Main Street, across America, have a profit margin usually around 1% or 1.5%. These swipe fees are inflation multipliers. I think it makes perfect sense if you're paying 3% for $2 a gallon gas versus 3% tax on a $5 a gallon of gas, that's an inflation multiplier. Everywhere across the state of Kansas, what I hear folks concerned about, whether you're a young family starting off with 2 kids at home or you're a senior citizen living Social Security check to Social Security check, their biggest challenge is just paying for groceries, paying for gasoline. And what these Visa credit card bills, these swipe bills do, are an inflation multiplier to an already tough situation. And then just to cap it off, the average interest rate that folks are paying is 25% on these same cards. Anyone that votes against the Marshall-Durbin Amendment is voting for Wall Street, that they're picking Wall Street over Main Street. I'm here today to support Main Street America. Peter Welch, Senator Welch.
Thank you. Senator Durbin and Senator Marshall said it all, but you know, it's a monopoly, or we can be polite, it's a duopoly. What do? They rip off consumers. They raise prices, and they do it because they can. What's involved in this transaction is using a credit card. It goes through an electronic processing. It's secure, and all of us here want to maintain its security. But why every year does the cost of this transaction go up? It's not because the service is better. It's not because our merchants are getting any additional value. It's because Visa and MasterCard can stick it to Main Street every moment of the day, 24 hours a day. It is a brutal cost that does nothing to benefit our downtown, small town merchants. And you know, in addition to just the ripoff, I mean, why is it that some of the worst things that a monopoly can do are legal? You know what it is? It's because we let them, and it is on us. Senator Marshall, you're right. We have the responsibility to level the playing field so that merchants who have no capacity to negotiate these deals, and I mean no, zero, nada, none, they just have to take it or leave it. We can restore competition by passing this bill. And I want to say the last thing of why I think it's so important, beyond the fairness, beyond stopping the ripoff. Our small towns, our communities are under a lot of stress. And the stress of prices and competition that folks here have to live with every single day is making it tough to keep those stores open. And when those stores close, the communities we live in, they're less of the community that we love. What folks really need in this country are these community centers where we can go, we can see our neighbors, we can get our cup of coffee, we can buy our clothes, we can buy our groceries, we can meet our neighbors. And you know what? Visa, MasterCard could care less, because all they want to do is grab a piece of the action every single time you buy a cup of coffee, every single time you buy a skirt, every single time you get a toy for your son or your daughter. It's got to end. Thank you.
Thanks.
We have some guests here. We welcome them. Danny Reynolds is here from Stevenson's of Elkhart, Indiana. Danny?
Thank you, Senator Durbin. I'll say right off the bat, I'm not nearly as intelligent or well-spoken as these gentlemen, but I am just as passionate about this cause, and I sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate the support. As I said, my name is Danny Reynolds. I'm from Stevenson's. We're a clothing store in Elkhart, Indiana. Our fashion apparel store has been a staple in our community for over 90 years. I traveled to Washington, D.C. today to ask Congress to pass the Credit Card Competition Act. My personal 29 years in the retail business, credit card companies and the banks continuously raise what we pay for swipe fees. For my store, the amount we pay each year has grown to the equivalent of a starting full-time employee's salary. I would love to hire more employees, But these skyrocketing fees on top of challenging economic conditions are making it impossible to create more jobs in our community. I'm also concerned about my customers. Small retailers simply can't absorb the increasing swipe fees that cause prices to rise. In fact, the excessive credit card swipe fees have been shown to now cost the average family in America $1,000 annually. That's in the form of higher prices and surcharges. Credit card swipe fees are a hidden tax, and it's simply unacceptable. Congress, it's time to stand up for Main Street over Wall Street and pass the Credit Card Competition Act. Again, I thank you so much, Senators Durbin, Marshall, and Welch, for your commitment and bipartisan support of this act. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danny. Nice sport coat. Patty Reardon, Smokestack Hobby Shop, Lancaster, Ohio.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Patty Reardon. My husband Don and I own the Smokestack Hobby Shop in Lancaster, Ohio. And I'm proud to be here today in support of the Credit Card Competition Act. When customers come into my store to buy a model train or remote control car, we are a small family-owned hobby shop. Some of them actually do offer cash. Thankfully, some of the regulars do that because they've heard how exorbitant swipe fees are. The fact that the global card networks and the Wall Street mega banks charge so much money to process their credit card transaction. Depending on the card, those fees range anywhere from $2 to $4 out of a retailer's $100 sale. And for most small merchants like us, it's the second highest operating cost after labor, and it drives up the prices that we have to charge our customers. As a small business owner, I feel that the burden of these fees is especially hard. That's because small businesses like ours, we pay the highest swipe fees. We have the fewest resources to navigate complex credit card contracts, and we have zero leverage whatsoever to negotiate. As much as I appreciate customers who use cash, that's obviously not the answer. The answer is competition, and that's why I support the Credit Card Competition Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Jared Sheeler is here from the Hub Convenience Stores of North Dakota. Jared?
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon. My name is Jared Sheeler, and I own the Hub Convenience Stores in North Dakota. We have 5 locations. My family and I have done a lot of work to build our small business and keep it going. We've got 95 team members who are also like family to us. They depend on us. Business isn't easy. In most places, there is another store across the street or down the block competing with us and trying to win over the same customers that we depend on. But of all the challenges I face running a small business, credit card fees are one of the most difficult and unfair. We pay far higher rates on those fees than our large competitors. The credit card companies design their pricing in that unfair way. And those fees are my second highest operating cost. What we pay our team members is first, but card fees are more than my rent or utilities, and frankly, it's not even close. Credit card fees cost me more than $600,000 last year alone. That's a huge hit, and it's more than $160,000 more than the previous year. As retailers, we shave every penny we can off our prices to get consumers in the door. That's how it works when you have a competitor nipping at your heels. But the credit card companies and the giant banks that issue credit cards don't compete. If we want small businesses like mine to be able to make things work, we need Congress to make sure the credit card industry has basic rules of the road, just like every other business. Until Congress acts, small businesses like mine will continue to get squeezed by the credit card industry. We need the Credit Card Competition Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Doug Yawberry is here from Weigel's in Knoxville, Tennessee. Doug?
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Yawberry. I'm the president of Weigel Stores out of Knoxville, Tennessee. We were a business established in 1931 as a dairy, and we have evolved into a convenience store chain. We still operate our dairy in 75 convenience stores and fuel outlets within the Knoxville market throughout Tennessee. While I should be in my office today running our business, I'm here today for a very important reason. Because of the financial burden imposed on us due to credit card swipe fees. These fees are not set by market. They are centrally fixed by Visa and MasterCard on big banks across on behalf of big banks across the country. That's not right for us and or our customers. Credit card swipe fees inflate prices on everything in our stores and everything online. My customers don't need artificially inflated prices. They need relief, and my business needs relief too. Every other price we pay is a result of market competition except for swipe fees. Not only that, but swipe fees are a percentage of our total sales. So in excess of 2% of our gross sales go to swipe fees. That's before expenses. And not only that, but that 2% also is on when we pay our sales tax and our fuel taxes, we are also paying that 2% swipe fee on those also. In fact, it is more often than not that our swipe fee will equate to more than we're paying or are making on a gallon of gas, believe it or not. So this shows it's a strange operation of how this works, but in our instance, credit card fees accounted for $15.7 million of our revenue in the last year. That is a 28% increase from year over year. If you look at the prior year, it was $12.2 million. That was a 22% increase over the prior year. So we continue to have no relief, and it continues to grow over time. And now there's the statement that these fees will be raised. It is definitely our second highest expense within our organization, right under labor. So that brings me to why I'm here today, or to revisit why I'm here today. This problem and issue will not fix itself. I have a simple message for Congress. It's time to support Main Street and our customers. The credit card industry will never stop taking advantage of us if they're allowed to play without rules that the rest of us have to live by. We need to pass the Credit Card Competition Act. Thank you.
Our last guest is Jimmy Holland, Associated Wholesale Grocers, Kansas City, Kansas.
Afternoon. I'm proud to represent Associated Wholesale Grocers based in Senator Marshall's home state of Kansas. We serve 1,100 local grocers and the tens of thousands of customers that shop with them on a daily basis. They have stores in over 30 states, including Kansas, and those states are across the Midwest and the Mid-South. AWG and its local grocers strongly supports the Credit Card Competition Act because it fixes a broken system and it provides relief to grocers and retailers alike. Local grocers are the lifeblood of their communities, and they're getting squeezed every day by swipe fees. If you take a look at a normal grocery basket and there's $100 worth of a sale in that, a local grocer on average is hoping to make about $2 on that $100 sale. That's not a very high margin at all. Visa and MasterCard charge between $2 and $4 just to transmit the transaction for that sale. So if you look at how they're being squeezed, Visa and MasterCard are charging equal to or double what our local grocers are just hoping to make on the same transaction. It's not fair. It can't keep going. It has to stop. But we need Congress's help to do that. Local grocers have got to have that help. The bipartisan Credit Card Competition Act does just that. There is no price cap. There is no government price controls. It's simply a common sense solution that will introduce the smallest level of competition into the transaction market. The grocery industry, our local grocers, are highly competitive. They understand how to compete and do so daily on a daily basis on prices and products. Competition works. We know that. We desperately need it in the transaction market. We call on all the senators, and Senator Marshall, thank you so much for leading the charge on this. We call on all senators to join Senator Marshall in voting yes on his amendment on the Credit Card Competition Act. Thank you.
Jimmy, good job. Thanks.
Thank you. One point I want to make that may not have come through clearly. Credit cards are issued primarily by banks. And the banks that are affected by the Marshall, Durbin, Marshall, depending on which day of the week, plan are banks which have over $100 billion in assets. You know, these are not small country banks. These are the big boys. And one credit union we think may be qualifying for that. And as a result, we know that these banks in small town America are not going to feel the impact of this. So that was intentional in the way we wrote the bill. Let's open it to questions if anybody has any.
Senator Durbin, Steve Dennis of Bloomberg. I guess you guys are trying to get this onto the minibus and get an amendment vote as soon as possible on the floor. Do you think there's a good chance of that in the next week or so? And I'm wondering if you have sort of a reaction to I'm sure you've seen all of the lobbying arguments. There's a donut truck warning that they're going to take your rewards away if you pass this bill. There's arguments that some of your colleagues have told me, both sides of the aisle, that they're worried about security if this passes and some unknown network comes in and takes some of this business.
For any visitors, Minibus was a group of 3 appropriation bills which we were trying to call for consideration and bring up this measure. As part of it, the bus was pulled over to the curb this afternoon. We don't know how soon it's going to be back on the road again, but I'm going to leave it to Dr. Marshall to describe his approach as the lead sponsor this week of the bill.
Yeah. You know, it's not easy, but it's important. No one said that this was going to be an easy fight. I think it's an uphill battle. I think it's fair enough that we deserve a vote on this amendment. We're not, you know, it's up to my colleagues whether we're going to get this vote or not. Right now there's 4 Republican senators and 2 Democrats that are keeping us from having this vote that's pushed this bus to the side. So this is up to them. But I'm telling you what, they're folks back home, these senators that are holding up this vote, they're going to have to answer to Main Street, not to Wall Street eventually. So I think that there's a path to go across the finish line, and I think that Americans deserve this vote. I think on your 2 other parts on this question, we actually think that this bill will be more secure because the banks get to choose who the second company is they're going to choose. So the bank is not going to choose somebody that they don't think has good cybersecurity, and we actually exclude some foreign entities as well. So we actually think it was going to be safer. Was there a piece of the question I missed?
Donut truck.
The donut truck? I missed the donut truck too.
There's the rewards question.
The rewards question. Okay, I'm going to bet Senator Durbin on the Chiefs and Bears game that there still will be rewards at the end of the day here. I really do think that there'll be rewards. I understand that's a scare tactic. And lastly, rewards are for rich people, okay? Rewards are for rich people. Those people back home that are living second to second and from paycheck to paycheck don't get to benefit those in the same way as well. But at the end of the day, competition is going to come back, and there's going to be these smaller, I say smaller, a $10 billion bank issuing more credit cards and financing this as well. So I think that competition is going to force that. You know, Target's not getting rid of their card. You know, JCPenney's isn't getting rid of their card. Those folks are going to keep their card. So I think at the end of the day that those folks are still going to come back in with rewards.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
To our guests. Thanks.
Great
for
job.
coming.